I came back from work expecting a quiet evening, but instead, I saw my 7-year-old daughter, Lyra, carrying her baby brother alone in the woods. Her tiny arms were shaking under the weight, and my heart stopped. I dropped my bag and ran to them, my mind racing with fear. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I grabbed Lyra's hand and hugged her close, asking why she was out here alone. She looked at me with wide, scared eyes and whispered, "Mama, Daddy, he shouted at us and left." My stomach turned. I glanced around and noticed the house door was open, a bottle missing, and faint scratches on the floor. Something was very wrong. I gently took the baby from her and carried him inside, checking him over. Lyra clung to me, trembling. I called out for Merrick, my husband, but there was no answer. Panic and anger rose together in my chest. I remembered the late nights he'd been sneaking out, the little lies he told, and suddenly it all made sense. Our home, our life, everything I trusted, was slipping through my fingers. I held my children close and felt a wave of determination. I couldn't let anyone hurt them, not him, not anyone. That night, I realized I would have to fight for them, even if it meant facing the person I once loved the most. And I swore to myself, in that cold, quiet moment, that justice would be mine. I ran toward the children, my heart pounding. Lyra's face was pale, and she gripped her brother tightly. "Mama, someone tried to hurt us," she whispered, her voice trembling. I felt a cold shock run through me, fear pressing in from every side. I knelt beside them, holding them close, my mind racing with protective instincts I hadn't realized were so strong. The house behind us didn't feel safe. The door was ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, small signs of disturbance caught my eye, a missing bottle, faint scratches on the wooden floor, and the faint smell of someone unfamiliar. My chest tightened as I remembered the tension that had been growing between Merrick and me, the arguments, the silent treatments, the nights I had lain awake wondering if things were really okay. I checked my son, making sure he was unharmed, then looked back at Lyra. Her small hand in mine reminded me how vulnerable they were, and how much responsibility rested on me now. Every instinct screamed that danger was still near, that someone had crossed a line I could never forgive. I couldn't let my fear freeze me. I knew I had to act quickly, to get them somewhere safe, and to figure out what had really happened while Merrick was gone. The calm I once felt in our home had vanished, replaced by a tense, uneasy vigilance. I swallowed my fear and steeled myself. Whatever had happened, I would protect my children. No matter the cost, I wouldn't let anyone harm them again. As I tidied up the living room, a folded envelope slipped from behind a cushion. Inside were letters and receipts I had never seen before. My hand shook as I skimmed them. Merrick had been sending money to someone else, hiding debts, and writing things I couldn't believe. Every line felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I sank into a chair, clutching the papers, my mind racing. He had lied about where he went, what he spent, who he met. Everything I thought I knew about him was shattered. I felt a mixture of anger and fear, a roaring need to protect Lyra and the baby from someone who could betray us so completely. Lyra sat beside me, her small face worried. "Mama, I tried to make him stop," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. But he shouted at me, her words cut through me, sharper than any evidence. I pulled her close, feeling the weight of what had happened, realizing my children had faced his anger alone. The betrayal was more than lies and money, it was the safety of my family, the trust one had placed in the man I once loved. I stared at Lyra, then at the baby sleeping beside me, my chest tight. Something had to change. I couldn't let them be exposed to this danger any longer. Merrick's secrets weren't just betrayals, they were threats. I made a silent promise that nothing he had done, nothing he would do, would harm my children again. I waited in the kitchen, my hands clenched, heart hammering as I heard the front door open. Merrick stepped inside, his face calm, too calm. "Where have you been?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and fear. He smirked, dismissing my question. "Working late." You worry too much, he said, a lie coated in charm. I could feel my patience snapping. Don't lie to me, Merrick. I know about the money, the letters, everything. His expression darkened, and suddenly the man I had once trusted felt like a stranger. He moved toward the baby, reaching out with a hand that made my skin crawl. Give me the baby, he growled. Panic surged through me. I grabbed the baby, shielding him with my body, while Lyra clung to my side. Stay back, I shouted, my voice cracking but firm. Merrick lunged, anger blazing in his eyes, and I realized he would not stop. Without thinking, I ran, carrying the children through the back door and into the woods. The cold air hit us as I stumbled over roots, my heart racing. I glanced back. Merrick shouted, but I couldn't hear the words over the roar in my own ears. My children's tiny hands held mine tightly, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of being utterly alone. The man I had shared my life with, the one I thought I could trust with my children's safety, had become the source of the greatest danger we had ever faced. In that moment, fear and betrayal intertwined so tightly I could barely breathe, but I knew one thing: I would never let him take them again. The cabin stood quiet at the edge of the woods, far enough from the house that Merrick wouldn't think to look there. I settled the children inside, wrapping them in blankets and trying to steady my breathing. Every moment felt unreal, but I forced myself to stay focused. They needed calm, even if I didn't feel it. When they finally slept, I sat at the small table with a notebook. One page after another, I wrote down everything I had found: dates, payments, names, the way his behavior had changed, the moments that now made sense in a twisted way. Each detail became another piece of the truth I planned to bring to light. My hands shook, not from cold but from the weight of what I was preparing to do. Hatred simmered under my skin, sharp and restless, but guilt crept in beside it. I wondered if I had missed signs earlier, if I could have shielded Lyra from the fear she had felt. I traced her name on the page, reminding myself why I couldn't turn back. Her safety mattered more than anything. The fear of what Merrick might try next kept my nerves tight, pushing me to plan carefully. A soft knock startled me. When I opened the door, Tavan stood there, lantern in hand. He lived a mile away and had always been quiet, observant. Without asking questions, he handed me a small bag of supplies. You're not alone, he said simply. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a calm understanding. He didn't press for details, and I didn't offer any, but his steady presence gave me a moment of peace. With his help and my growing determination, I knew I could finish what I had started. Revenge wasn't just anger, it was protection. And I was ready. Each day, after settling the children at the cabin, I slipped out to watch Merrick from a distance. I kept to the trees, tracking his movements as he went about his usual patterns, leaving the house at odd hours, meeting people I didn't recognize, carrying envelopes he hid quickly. I noted every stop, every face, every suspicious exchange. The more I learned, the clearer his confidence became. He walked with an air that said nothing could touch him, not the truth, not consequences, not even the family he had abandoned. His arrogance made my stomach twist, but it also strengthened my resolve. Back at the cabin, Lyra spent quiet afternoons speaking with Tavan while he chopped wood nearby. She asked simple questions, her voice soft but curious, showing a strength I hadn't expected. Even after everything, she found ways to smile at small things: a leaf pattern, a bird call, the echo of her own footsteps on the cabin floor. Watching her reminded me why I could not falter. She was still standing, so I had to stand too. But the fear never left. Each night, as the children slept beside me, my mind replayed the risks over and over. If Merrick sensed even a hint of my plans, he would react without hesitation. Every snapped twig outside made me sit up, heart pounding. Shadows stretched across the cabin walls, and I imagined him finding us before I gathered enough proof to stop him for good. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. The tension hung thick in the air, pressing on my chest. Still, I forced myself to continue. Every piece of evidence, every quiet observation, was one step closer to exposing him. One step closer to safety. One afternoon, I watched Merrick from a distance as he paraded around town with expensive watches and designer bags, clearly proud of what he had acquired. Each item was a silent message, a display of power he thought I couldn't challenge. My stomach twisted as I realized these weren't gifts for anyone. He was showing off the spoils of his secret life, bought with money stolen from the family he was supposed to protect. Later, hidden among his papers, I found a set of documents that made my blood run cold. He had drawn up plans, with names and dates, showing how he intended to take Lyra and the baby away permanently. Everything I feared crystallized in black and white. He wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he was plotting to rip my children from me. A wave of fury and dread washed over me. His betrayal was deeper than I had imagined, and the danger was no longer theoretical. Merrick's actions revealed a man capable of cruelty and selfishness I hadn't fully comprehended. The person I had trusted to protect our family had become a threat, and the magnitude of it struck me harder than any words could convey. I closed my eyes for a moment, remembering the nights he had promised to be there, the words of love he had spoken, the comforting presence I had relied on. All of it now felt like a lie told in cold blood. The anger surged alongside my fear, a mix I had never known so sharply. For the first time I understood the depth of the fight ahead. This was no longer about uncovering secrets, it was about survival and making sure he could never harm my children again. I carefully arranged a meeting, knowing Merrick would take the bait. Every detail had to be precise: location, timing, the right words to provoke him without tipping him off. My hands trembled as I double-checked the evidence hidden in my bag, knowing this could either expose him or put us all in danger. When he arrived, he swaggered in, confident as ever, completely unaware of what I had planned. His arrogance was his weakness. I stayed calm, letting him talk, letting him reveal the lies and threats he thought no one knew about. Each word he spoke, each boast, was being recorded silently, captured exactly as I needed. Adrenaline coursed through me, making my senses sharp. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat as I stayed focused, matching his intensity with careful composure. The tension was unbearable, but every second brought me closer to the proof I needed. Merrick's contempt made him careless, he didn't suspect I had anticipated every move. When it was over, I slipped away with the recordings, my chest tight with relief and triumph. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of victory. I had outsmarted him, turned his own confidence against him. The fear didn't vanish entirely, but it was now tempered with hope that this small victory could be the first step toward protecting my children and reclaiming the life he had tried to destroy. I sat alone in the cabin, the quiet pressing around me. The adrenaline of the day had faded, leaving only the ache of exhaustion and the weight of responsibility. I stared at my children sleeping, wondering if I was truly strong enough to keep them safe. Could I face whatever Merrick tried next and still protect them? Doubts gnawed at me, whispering that maybe I wasn't enough. My mind turned over the choices ahead. Part of me wanted revenge, to make him feel even a fraction of the fear and betrayal he had caused. Another part wanted to forgive, to let go of the anger that burned inside me. But forgiveness felt impossible now. Survival and safety came first, and revenge, measured and careful, seemed the only way to ensure it. The weight of being both mother and protector pressed heavily on me. I had never imagined carrying such responsibility alone, and the thought of failing my children made my chest tighten. Still, I couldn't stop. Every fear, every sleepless night, every trembling heartbeat was a reminder that I had to find strength I didn't know I had. Lyra stirred beside me and reached out, her small hand brushing my arm. "Mama," she said softly, her voice full of innocence, "you're strong like the trees." Her words broke through my fear, a quiet affirmation that even in my doubts, I had something solid, something enduring. I held her close, feeling a spark of courage rekindle. Maybe I wasn't invincible, but for them, I could grow strong enough. I knew it was time to let others know what Merrick had done. I gathered a few trusted neighbors and a family friend, speaking quietly but firmly about everything I had discovered, his lies, his schemes, the danger he posed to Lyra and the baby. Faces around me shifted from disbelief to concern, and I realized the truth I had carried alone was finally shared. When Merrick appeared unexpectedly, he tried to soften his words, smiling as if nothing had happened. "I've changed," he said, his voice smooth, trying to rewrite the story I knew by heart. He reached out, attempting to regain the ground he had lost, but I could see through the charm, through the manipulation that had defined our life together for so long. I felt a storm of emotions, old love, lingering hope, and raw fear, but underneath it all was clarity. The safety of my children outweighed every lingering doubt or temptation to forgive. I could not risk their well-being for his promises, empty and rehearsed. Taking a deep breath, I stepped back and shook my head, refusing his gestures. I would not allow him to undo the walls I had built to protect my family. The choice was painful but resolute. I would face him with courage, not reconciliation. The children came first, always, and in that moment, I felt a fierce certainty settle inside me. Whatever came next, I would act as their shield, and nothing, no charm, no lies, could change that. The days that followed were tense but necessary. Authorities and a lawyer reviewed the evidence I had gathered, and each document, each recording, began to unravel Merrick's carefully constructed lies. His schemes, once hidden behind arrogance and charm, were laid bare for everyone who mattered to see. I watched as the truth spread quietly but powerfully. Neighbors and friends who had doubted me now understood the danger we had faced. Merrick's attempts to excuse himself or manipulate perceptions failed completely. The weight of his deceit finally brought consequences he could not escape, financial, legal, and social. For the first time in months, a sense of relief settled over me. The betrayal that had haunted every thought and stolen every quiet moment was being confronted. I no longer felt powerless. I could see the path forward clearly. Lyra and the baby were safe, and I held the reins of our lives once again. Even in the quiet moments, I felt satisfaction that justice, measured and real, was served. Merrick's downfall wasn't revenge in the cruel sense, it was the balance of truth catching up to lies, the protection of the family he had tried to destroy. Holding Lyra's hand and watching her cradle her baby brother, I realized how much had changed. Our home, our lives, were ours to rebuild. The fear that had shadowed every step was gone, replaced by a steady confidence. Finally, the children could thrive, and I could breathe knowing that the man who had betrayed us could no longer threaten our safety or peace. I began living deliberately, careful with every choice, every interaction that involved Merrick. When he tried to contact me, I remained composed, offering nothing, no anger, no forgiveness, no attention. The power he had once held over our lives slipped quietly from his grasp. I refused to let him manipulate or intimidate me, and each refusal, each boundary I enforced, felt like a small victory. I didn't seek confrontation or revenge through violence, my triumph was in reclaiming my life and my children's peace. Every decision I made reinforced that control, from managing our home to planning our days without fear. I discovered a calm strength in asserting my independence, a quiet power that Merrick could not undermine. Lyra noticed it too. She began to mirror my steadiness, holding herself with a little more confidence, smiling more easily. Even the baby seemed to sense the safety surrounding him, sleeping peacefully in the evenings while I quietly went about our routines. Their trust in me strengthened my resolve, reminding me that my victory wasn't in punishment, it was in protection and freedom. Each day without yielding to his demands, without allowing him to influence our lives, reinforced the truth I had carried all along: I could survive, and my children could thrive. That quiet reclamation, this unspoken triumph, felt more satisfying than anything else. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe fully, knowing that Merrick no longer had a place in our world, and our family was finally secure under my care. Morning sunlight spilled into the cabin, warming the small kitchen as I made breakfast for Lyra and the baby. The smell of pancakes and syrup brought soft smiles to their faces, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of normalcy. We began small rituals, reading together after meals, walks through the woods, and quiet evenings where laughter filled the spaces that had once felt heavy with fear. Lyra learned to climb trees carefully, the baby giggling at every wobble, and I watched them with a mixture of relief and quiet pride. Each laugh, each playful moment, reminded me that we were surviving, that joy could exist even after hardship. The weight of past days lingered only briefly, fading when their innocence drew me fully into the present. I noticed subtle changes in myself too. My steps were steadier, my voice calmer, my decisions measured with the clarity that comes from surviving a storm. The fear that had once dominated every thought was replaced with cautious confidence. I understood the importance of vigilance, but it no longer ruled my life. Evenings often brought quiet reflection. Sometimes a shadow of tension would pass through my chest, a reminder of what we had endured, but it no longer threatened to overwhelm me. Each day of shared laughter, each safe night spent together, strengthened a bond that had been tested and had survived. In the stillness, I realized that we were healing, not completely untouched, but resilient. Our lives were not defined by betrayal or fear anymore. I had grown stronger, wiser, and more certain. And as I watched Lyra tuck the baby into his crib with gentle care, I knew we were ready to face the future together, whole and unbroken. The forest path stretched ahead, quiet except for the crunch of leaves beneath my boots. Lyra skipped beside me, holding the baby's hand gently as he babbled happily. The woods no longer felt like a place of fear, they were a space of freedom, of safety, of reclaimed life. Each step reminded me of how far we had come, from trembling in terror to walking with confidence. I paused for a moment, letting the sunlight filter through the trees, and reflected on everything we had endured. Betrayal had cut deep, leaving scars that would linger, but it had also shown me the depth of my own strength. Survival had demanded courage I didn't know I possessed, and love had guided every choice I made. Revenge, careful and deliberate, had protected what mattered most. Lyra glanced up at me with a small smile, her trust and resilience evident in her bright eyes. The baby wiggled in her grip, cooing softly, sensing the security around him. In that quiet moment, I understood that the life we had rebuilt was stronger than the one Merrick had tried to destroy. I breathed deeply, a mixture of relief and pride filling me. I came back from work that day terrified for my kids, I whispered to myself, but I never imagined I'd find the courage to face the man who tried to destroy us, and win. The woods stretched on, calm and forgiving, and for the first time in a long time I felt at peace. Together, we moved forward, no longer defined by fear or betrayal, but by the strength, love, and determination that had carried us through. The journey was far from easy, but we had survived, and we were finally free.